If you saw a person wearing dark sunglasses or some sort of tinted glasses indoors, would you think that they were probably just an alien because that's the strangest thing in the world?
No. Often people who have various conditions making them visually impaired will find that glasses are immensely helpful for dealing with glare. And so it's very effective for them to wear those, whether it's a particularly sunny day or in an indoor area where they find that the lighting is just a bit too much. Glasses can be a phenomenal way of preserving the length of usable vision throughout a given day. Because if you think about it, if you're having to squint or adjust in order to use your remaining vision, then that will tire you out just as the use of any other muscle will. And so subsequently, the use of glasses is a wonderful low-tech tool to not only provide potential adjustment to the actual vision being used, that is the quality of the vision, but it also provides a practical way of reducing glare.
Is it true that every single person who walks with a white cane can't see anything?
It is not true. Blindness and low vision, as with other disabilities, happens on a spectrum, and the vast majority of people who identify as blind or low vision have a large amount of remaining vision that they can use, and yet they will still find it helpful in various circumstances to have a long white cane for identification purposes or for depth detection, detecting drop-offs such as stairs and curbs, as well as they might get into a ticklish situation where the light changes suddenly, and so they may not need the cane except for a couple of minutes in a given trip. But it's good to need it, have it, and not need it, rather than need it and not have it.
If someone has never encountered a blind person before, is it best practice to immediately go up to them and ask, how many fingers am I holding?
No, that is not best practice at all. Nor is it best practice to go and fling them bodily over your shoulder if you see them on a corner and drag them across the street, or yell out directions because you're sure you know where they're trying to get to. It's most effective if you run into someone who's blind or low vision to walk up and in a normal tone of voice just ask if there's any way that you can be of assistance. If they want your assistance, they will say so and give you directions as to how to best be of assistance to them. And if it's not something they want, you can just say thank you and then move on. You definitely don't want to impose yourself upon them, because for all you know, they know perfectly well where they're going, even if that doesn't seem to be evident to you.
And you shared with me before about a very upsetting experience, and I wonder if you can recite it again, about when you were playing a video game.
Yes, I am willing to share that. So, as I mentioned, my loss of vision was gradual from the age of 12 to 17. However, I had a large amount of residual vision. I wrapped up my sophomore year of high school and went home for the summer. And during that summer, I was playing Mortal Kombat, and I noticed that the figures were starting to look elongated and out of sorts, and also that my eyes were tiring and fatiguing much more quickly than they had in the past. And it was deeply, deeply upsetting to me, because I was one of those teenagers who could very happily kill 3 or 4 hours in front of, this will date me, but in front of the Super Nintendo, no problem at all. And so as I tried the following day to play it again, but at that point it was just not feasible. I wasn't getting enough visual feedback to make it to a point where I could move the characters properly, and I found that to be true with other games that I tried as well. It was very disappointing and frustrating, because it just came up on very suddenly. I was aware that I'd been losing vision and that things were less clear than they had once been a few months prior to the end of the We'll edit this out. One moment. The previous spring of this year that I'm speaking about, I had noticed that I was playing Dragon Warrior, which is an old Nintendo game. And at a particular point, all the writing that's in white on a black background turns to red, and I couldn't read it. And I was so frustrated. I yelled for a family member to come and read it to me, and they did, but I was deeply, deeply frustrated. But everything else worked just fine. I still had enough vision to use the machine and enjoy the games until that experience with Mortal Kombat that summer. And then after that, I lost all functioning vision. I had some light perception left, but that was it. And so when I subsequently returned to school for my junior year, I was sitting in a math class, and they put a math book underneath a CCTV, and regardless of how much I blew it up or changed the acuity of the sharpness of the letters, it didn't matter. I was not able to read it. And my math teacher was wonderful because he was like, okay, not a problem. We're doing Euclidean geometry this year, and so we have adaptations where we can just use a rubber tactile board for doing the shapes, and I'll show you how it works. And he was just so easygoing about it. Len Fleehardy with the Carter School for the Blind, one of the best math instructors I've ever had, and I attribute part of my processing of my blindness in a good way to him responding in such a positive way, just taking it in hand and in stride, that, yeah, okay, you can't use the remaining vision you have anymore, that's fine, let's make it work tactilely. Something that can cause confusion to the general public is people will assume that if you have a cane, therefore you have no vision, and so they will see someone using their residual vision and then bust out a cane a few minutes later and think that there's some sort of falsification going on, when that's simply not the case. It just happens to be that in that case they need to use their cane. And so it's very important to educate people about the fact that the vast majority of people they say using a cane likely have some sort of residual vision left.
How long have you been blind?
I have been blind for 25 years.
And what made you decide to go blind?
The realities of life, unfortunately. I was born 3.5 months prematurely, and back in the dark ages of 1980, that meant that I was placed in an incubator and had oxygen blown directly on my face, which was great because I could breathe, but unfortunately it caused my retinas to detach. It's a disease called retinopathy of prematurity, and it caused me to gradually lose my vision. I had pretty usable vision up until I was 12, and then I gradually lost it from the age of 12 to 17.
Is there anything else about you that we should know?
I'm totally blind. Cannot see anything at all, and I walk with a long white cane. Give me a hint. Throw me a bone.
Like some words of wisdom.
Like what? Often imitated, never duplicated?
Is that original? It's not original.
It is not original.
Is it true that if you touch a blind person, you will get their cooties and you will then also go blind?
Yes, absolutely. Everyone knows that this is how blindness is spread, as well documented in the movie Blindness from a few years back. No, it is not the case. Whether their cane or another portion of them touches you, you will not acquire their disease. It's not communicable that way, and yeah, that's it.
Tell me something about yourself that nobody could possibly guess.
I am a huge fan of Mortal Kombat, which people would not guess because I also happen to love classical music and fine dining. But I loved Mortal Kombat when I was a teenager, and I had enough vision at that point where I could play regularly and knew all the fatalities and thought it was great.
What is the worst part of being blind?
I would say the worst part about being blind is always being beholden to someone else's schedule. specifically when it comes to travel. So if I wish to go anywhere beyond a certain set of places, it's a big deal. A place I love to go is Glenwood Springs up in the mountains, but it's 3.5, 4 hours away. And so I either have to impose on someone for a car ride, or there is an Amtrak train that goes up that way, but it's a 5.5, 6 hour trip via train. The cost is more expensive than it would be just going in a car. And then also finding your way once you get to the Amtrak station can be difficult. It's certainly not impossible, but it's not convenient by any means. And even with wonderful advances in technology such as Uber or Lyft, and purchasing tickets online for airplanes and all that, and making it through the airport effectively, it's still something where you're stuck with someone else's timetable, either that of a friend or of the Uber or the Lyft. If there aren't any Ubers or Lyfts out, then it makes it very difficult to get places.
Is it true that blind people don't know how to do math?
No, it is not true that blind people do not know how to do math.
What is 2 + 2?
4.
What is the best part about being a blind person?
You can pause it. I'm going to need a moment to think about that.
Because it just sucks in general?
No, definitely not BA. The best part about being a blind person is that you have a secret code that you know and the rest of the world doesn't. And so you can be reading anything from a copy of the Kama Sutra to the latest business report on your braille display in a meeting, and no one knows what you're doing. You are able to travel independently and generally unscathed with proper training techniques, which has not always been the case as a blind person in this day and age. So it's wonderful in that regard. And also, I think the chip that gets pushed on your shoulder to succeed. As someone who is blind, you have to be adaptable and creative in problem solving, or else the world is just going to mow you down. And so being able to work with technology, being able to problem solve on the fly, and having the tenacity and perseverance necessary to conquer the problems in front of you is a boon that blindness gives that I don't think that the average person out on the street has. Blindness has its highs and it has its lows, but it's never a dull moment. So get to know a blind person today, buy him lunch.